Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm here preaching the daily analysis of the Hindu from 27th of December 2024. Let's begin with today's analysis. This is a QR code of the Telegram account where you can find this particular PDF along with other material that is required for your preparation. So what are the topics that we have taken for today's analysis? Please have a look here. From today's The Hindu newspaper, crowd management, solid waste management rules, a draft has been basically made public by the government of India. We'll be reading about that. Then Anglo-Indians, then Euthanasia debate. What is that issue? What are the concerns, pros and against that? So we'll be seeing that. Then National Board for Wildlife, then PM Rashtriya Bal Puraskar. So let's begin with today's analysis from the crowd management. Okay, so there is a article that was present in your editorial today which dealt with crowd management. Crowd management. So now this becomes, why this becomes important is, see, this with respect to this, National Disaster Management Authority has given certain guidelines. Now whenever we deal with this topic, remember various stampedes have taken place. Again we realize that large gatherings are going to take place even when the festive season begins, when the New Year season begins. Along with it we have Kumbh Mela also going on at Prayagraj. So we realize that the issue with respect to crowd management becomes very, very important. And that is why this particular article also is important from the perspective of your civil services examination. Before we go on and understand what crowd management basically, we need to understand what crowd is, then what crowd management is, and what are the guidelines given by the National Disaster Management Authority. Let's begin. See, when I talk about the word crowd, crowd is a group of people gathered together usually for a common purpose based on emotions. Now please understand, this is again one of the definitions which is generally or widely accepted when we write the definition of a crowd. Like many people have gathered because of certain commonality of the agenda or commonality of emotion, commonality of thought. Now you will be saying, sir, when people or stampede takes place along the railway station also, that is not, is it based on emotion? No, but yes, it can be derived also. Understand why? Because a common emotion is transportation during that time. So there is a common agenda where people want to travel through a, let us say, a train or a, let us say, a bus, whatever be the means in which possibly certain crowd mismanagement takes place and the death of people can take place or stampedes can take place. So that is why, please remember, crowd is a group of people gathered together for a common purpose. Common purpose, what about the common agenda? Whether it is religious purpose, whether it is traveling purpose, whether you are going for picnic, whatever be the case, based on emotion. Now, emotion is the underlying reason for this purpose. So that is why this definition is widely accepted. Next, crowd movement involves a combination of voluntary and involuntary forces. Now, whenever we talk about crowd, that means a large number of people who are moving. Now that involves two types of movement or forces that are behind them, voluntary and involuntary. What are voluntary forces? When a crowd density is optimal, optimal means neither too high, neither too low. That means it can be easily managed, easily things can go on. So when the crowd density is optimal, people's movement is governed by social force. That means a physical response to a social interaction, which is a voluntary force. That means the crowd density, the number of people in per square unit area is neither too high, neither too low. And that movement of the crowd is taking place because of a social reason or for the reason why the people are there. That is a voluntary force. Now something that is expected would be taking place. Let us say, for example, if you are going to a religious place for worship. Now, assumably that the density of the people is not very high, nor very low, an optimal size, and the people over there are moving towards a religious sanatorium or let us say religious site because of a common emotion and with the optimal size. So this is something normal that is accepted. So that is a common force or a voluntary dimension which is associated with that. Because of what? The reason why they are there, along with it, the density of population is optimal. So that is a voluntary force. But then happens the involuntary dimension also. When the crowd density is critical, but sometimes what happens, the large number of people come there. And then what happens? The movement is governed by involuntary forces. That means you're pushing the people that I want to go first, I want to go first, I want to go first. This is what the common thing that arises. Then you break the lines, want to move here, then what happens? The other people are pushing. That is something that ideally you would not expect. Those are involuntary forces that arise, and that is also associated. And this is where the problem arises, that when the involuntary forces arises, pushing, pulling, and then someone falls down, and then many people move over that person, that the death of the person arises, and similarly other issues escalate. That is what is a problem that arises with the involuntary forces with respect to the crowd movement and management. So now we have understood what the word crowd basically means. Now if I move ahead, what is the aspect of crowd management? What is crowd management? Please understand. It is defined as a systematic planning for supervision of the orderly movement and assembly of people. That means, see, when I told you in the previous slide also, when it is voluntary, that means people are there for a common purpose, where the density of the population are not very high also, it can be managed. Because the problem, please remember, the stampede and the mismanagement arises when the number of people that should be there are much more than what is expected, and that is why the issue arises. Otherwise it can be managed. If someone, for example, if there are a capacity of 100 people and one person falls down, the other person is, out of the 100 people, let us say 10 people are there in a room, and one person falls down, you can easily pick that person up and ask whether the person is fine or not. But if the capacity of a room is 100 people and you have 400 people there, if any person falls or something happens, it becomes very difficult to manage that. And that is what raises a concern. That is why involuntary forces rises. So in order to prevent any such problems, we need a proper systematic planning so that the crowd management is done well. So crowd management is defined as the systematic planning and the supervision so that the movement of the people that take place is in an orderly manner. Now, crowd management involves assessment of the people handling capabilities of a space prior to use. What does it mean? That means, for example, when the district administration is preparing for Prayagraj Mahakumbh, you will be realizing what they would be doing. They would be expecting, okay, these are the millions of people who are going to come. So when the movement would be taking place of the various akhadas and other people, so we need this much of space, we need this much of police that should be deployed there, this is where they need to stay, and all these things are managed based on certain statistics and facts. So remember that is why we say the space prior to use. That means the important thing is, if you want to manage a crowd, you should in prior have the details of approximate people who are going to come, how the space should be utilized, because it is majorly the space issue with respect to the population of the people who are present there. Next is, it includes evaluation of the project levels of occupancy, adequacy of the means of ingress or any in large number of people coming at a very fast pace, or egress, processing procedure as ticket collection, expected types of activities and group of behavior. Now see, firstly, as we have studied all these, along with it, what are the number of people going to be there? What is the, let us say, the flow of people or outflow of people? Along with it, what all tickets have been bought for certain reasons? Let us say if you're going, some celebrities coming to some region, and you know that these are the number of people who are going to come because the tickets sold. We saw Diljit Dosanjh concert taking place across India. Now the number of tickets are going to be sold can tell you the approximate people who would be coming, and based on that you can assume that if assumably 60% of the people would be, let us say, coming with their own vehicles, then you need this much amount of space for the car parking. Then you know about 40% or let us say 50% will be coming using other vehicles, out of which let us say 30% will be using, let us say, cabs, other might be using two-wheelers. So based on that you basically plan ingress, outgress, planning based on ticketing, and all that is done. So because of the tickets being sold is a major parameter for crowd management also. So this is again an important parameter. Next, now these are the National Disaster Management Authority prepared the suggestive framework for preparation of crowd management plan for events and venues of mass gathering. Now these are the NDMA guidelines which becomes important for you when you are studying the aspect of crowd management. Now see, first is capacity building for places of mass gathering. That means infrastructure development should be depend upon the popularity, periodicity of an event, terrain, local population, weather, and etc. Staging points prepared for visitors with facilities of food, water, hygiene, and shelter. This is very important. Just imagine, we when we was listening about the concerts of last gatherings taking place in, let us say, Diljit Dosanjh concert or other concerts, we realize that very often the celebrities say that there was certain issue with respect to the stage positioning or let us say other dimensions. Why do these things basically come up? Because see, there's a possibility, let us say if the people are there, they cannot move out and there is lack of, let us say, food or let us say water. Then what can happen? There can be problem of dehydration. There can be problem of, let us say, people fainting. There can be issues with respect to, let us say, problems because of the large number of crowd being there. Some might have even a panic attack. So medical facility should be there. Are they present or not? All these things matter. So that is why, please remember, based on the popularity, periodicity, everything, all these things have to be done well, so that it becomes important. Now, one more thing is positioning on the stage. Now, please understand why the positioning of a stage becomes important is if the stage is, let us say, positioned in a central region, possibly the crowd management can be divided into all the sides, where entry of the crowd can be from all sides, not from the major three sides. And in that case, there's a greater chance of accommodating more people and that can be managed well. That is why, please understand, when we talk about the stage being placed for the celebrity, it is also important where the stage is placed. That is why, please understand, positioning of stage to the facilities all become important over here. Next is stakeholders profile. It requires understanding the nature of the event, whether it is a political event, whether it is a religious event, school, university event or sports event. We're going to have different set of people being there. If you realize there is, let us say, a religious event taking place, then you will be having large number of old people also coming. And young also, middle-aged also. But if you see Diljit Dosanjh concert, you'll be realizing larger number of youth is going to come. So when we have to segregate that because of other type of needs that may be required when you're managing the crowd also. So in case of the religious event, you have to be more particular because the older people are going to be in larger numbers over there. Next is crowd profiling with respect to the age, gender, economic strata, nature of venue, location, topography, temporal and permanent, open, closed, role of stakeholders, who all are a part of event like NGOs, neighborhood, events, local administration and all. Please remember, this is also very important is if the event is taking place, it should be taking place in a place where it should not disturb the other people also. That becomes also very, very important. So all these things are done. Now next, please see what are the other things that we do. Third, crowd management over here. Proper regulation of traffic around the mass gathering venues, route and exit maps. You always see whenever there is Independence Day parade has to take place or Republic Day parade has to take place, you realize that there is a traffic rules that are basically published in the newspapers by the Delhi police. And that basically tells you that the rerouting has taken place. So that is why it's a means of basically managing the crowd and the traffic accordingly. So routes and exit maps, a route map for the venues along with the emergency exits route at strategic location, barricades to control the movement of crowd, snake line approach should be followed in case of large crowd. Snake line, that means single lines basically moving out and they are turned and twisted based on the requirement. VIP handling, organize crowded events, managers should discourage general admission and have plans to handle the VIP visitors. Now, many would be saying, why should the VIP visitors be given a special preference in a concert and all? Please understand. Person given a tag of VIP because important because he might be an important person with respect to the position that person holds. Now, let us assume that that particular person is, let us say, a minister. Now he is himself not an individual personality but himself a property of a state. We have to take care of them. If any mishap happens, it is a loss to the state, the governments for that matter. So that is why we have to take care of them. Adequate protocols have to be followed accordingly. Next, over here till now we had studied crowd management. Now is the security arrangements. CCTV installation at close quarters and watchtowers. Then you have the safety measures. The organizer should ensure authorities' use of electricity, the fire safety extinguishers. Communication, a public address system with loudspeakers installed at crowded points to communicate with the crowds. Medical emergencies, the first aid rooms and ambulances should be there. Then we have the police deployment is very important if any law and order situation takes place, so they should be there to manage it. Now, these are the map which is basically representing tragic stampedes that have taken place along with the years. So just a representation for you, and the figure in red basically denotes the death that took place. So this is brief representation that you should be knowing. As an example, you can use. Next is Draft Solid Waste Management Rules 2024. What is solid waste? Please understand. Solid waste basically refers to, please see here. Solid waste basically refers to the process of what? First, collecting, transporting, treating, and disposal of solid waste. This is basically solid waste management. Now, the topic arises that what is solid waste? Now, please understand, this basically includes non-liquid, non-soluble material from various sources. Now, these might be hazardous in nature also. So please remember, solid waste is any non-liquid, non-soluble material from various resources that we can basically get. Now, solid waste management is a process of collecting, transporting, treating, and disposal of solid waste. Let's move ahead. What are the types? See, it can be domestic waste like the food. Then it can be commercial. Let us say discarded documents and packages. Then you see market or catering related issues, catering related waste. Then you have biomedical waste. And obviously then you have the electronic waste. So all these things are basically present. These are the types of waste that you can come across when you're talking about solid. Yeah. Now, this is continuously rising at an exponential rate in India because of the demand that is there and the population that we have, that basically to larger number of solid waste being generated. Now, key highlights of the new draft. What does the new draft talk about? First is, major thing that it talks about is the mandatory waste segregation, that you need to segregate the waste. Sanitation workers can collect unsegregated waste. If it is unsegregated, the sanitation worker will say that we will not collect it. So it is the onus of the people also, you need to segregate it. Fines and penalties may be imposed on the residential complexes and bulk waste if the waste is not segregated at source. The people not segregated and put it in the buckets of the waste, then fine can be imposed. And the sanitation workers might say that we will not collect it. This is based on the principle of pollution pays principle. The one who is polluting has an onus to pay for the damage also. Those who cause pollution should be responsible for cleaning and paying the damage. The waste must be separated into biodegradable and non-biodegradable. Non-biodegradable like plastic, metals and the glass. Biodegradable, let us say any dal or sabji that you have eaten, now that again thrown away, but again it can be degraded also. So it is a biodegradable waste. So these are what the mandatory waste segregation that we basically talk about. Now, next is the duties of the gated communities and institutions. Now, this provides onus or the liability with respect to certain dimensions with respect to the gated communities and the societies that you have. Now, the residential complexes, hotels, restaurants and institutions with areas over 5,000 square meters have the duty they have to perform. What are those duties? Segregate the waste at the source. That means wherever you are at the society, you need to segregate the waste into biodegradable and non-biodegradable. Ensure collection of waste into separate streams. Hand over recyclable material to authorized waste pickers or recyclers. Next, biodegradable waste should ideally be processed through composting or biomethylation within the premise, and residuary waste must be given to the authorized waste collectors, which will further go on to the other chain of cycle where the disposal might take place. So this is again the duties that have been given to the gated societies also. Next is third, focusing on a circular economy. Unlike the previous rules, the new draft emphasizes on market-based mechanism for managing waste. That means waste can be used, let us say, please understand. Supposingly, you have bought a vegetable, or let us say certain dal, or whatever be the thing. Now you have consumed some of it, and some of it is, let us say, stale now. You cannot consume it. But those collection of those biodegradable waste can also be converted into energy. Now that is what we are saying. The provisions for waste to energy processing, solid waste products manufacturing, produce circular economy. That means the economy should not stop at one place. Again, any product produced can again be recycled, reused. Again, in a means of economic aspects gain can be there. That is why waste to energy is again a means for getting energy from the waste and again monetary benefits. So this is, please remember, in India the problem that arises is that we are not till now able to tap on the means of waste to energy. Is some sector that is not being tapped till now properly. In United States and other regions where solid waste management is done to a great percentage, greater than 80%, it is very dismissibly poor condition, because people assume that this is an area where how can we earn money. The problem that arises is the mentality over here. This is a treasure that is there, where a large amount of energy can be created, or let us say circular economy can be going on, because from the waste you are again getting certain benefits to the monetary aspect. One more thing, let us say when we talk about e-waste also, you realize that every code or electronic gadgets that you have which are discarded because of older technology have a lot of precious metals in them, silver, gold, even platinum in cases, copper, so many things are there. Now, in India, the proper segregation of these metals don't take place. If that is done properly, you'll be realizing that people who are involved in this industry might gain a massive amount of wealth. Initial capital expenditure has to be done, but again, people do not want to enter this area. That is what the problem arises. That is what the government is right now aiming. Circular economy, that from the waste also, that continuous flow of economy that keeps on continuing, and then again benefits not only the individual or the group who are doing that, but also the country as a whole. Penalty for non-compliance. Environmental compensation penalty will be imposed based on the polluter pay principle for non-compliance. Polluter pay principle simply means, again I'm telling you, the one who is polluting has to pay for the damages that the pollution is causing. Very simple, right? Next, managing agricultural waste. The Gram Panchayats are responsible for ensuring that no open burning of agriculture and horticulture waste takes place. In case any person violates, heavy penalties shall be. Now, this will basically help in solving the problem of the pollution also. These are the principles, again, they are under discussion. You'll be seeing them also. So, this is, again, please understand, many people say that it's putting on onus on a lot of the people for segregation, but again, it is important. These principles have been adopted in United States also, United Kingdom also, France also, and one of the reasons for moving away from the pollution regime in United Kingdom that was present during the Industrial Revolution phase was also imposition of heavy penalties for pollution and non-segregation of waste. So, if this is again imposed in India also, we will be realizing that a positive sign can be seen. Right. Let's move ahead. Anglo-Indians, mixed feelings, Anglo-Indian identity. Now, we need to understand what the Anglo-Indians over here are. Origin, if you see, the Anglo-Indian community in India originated from an official policy by the British India Company, which encouraged marriage between the officers and the local women. That means the officers, British officers who had come to India, they were told that as a policy that you marry the local people. Now, this had various advantages because firstly, that was a means through which religion could be propagated. Second is that through local marriages, you are basically building confidence in the mind of the people, and it is easier to have those people in the favor of the Britishers also. And these were certain means through which basically Britishers spread their rule also. One of the means, other means, you know, very well know that missionaries had also been there. But talking about the Anglo-Indian community, the policy of the British Indian East India Company had been that the officers should be given the idea that you should try to marry the local people, local women. So what happened? Now comes the term Anglo-Indian, first appeared in the Government of India Act 1935. Now, based on this only, we have also used this word in the Constitution of India. Article 366(2) of the Constitution of India defines Anglo-Indian as a person whose father or male ancestor are of European descent. Any person whose father, or let us say a male ancestor, is from a European descent will be considered as a Anglo-Indian. Domiciled within Indian territory, born to parents habitually resident in India, not temporary present. That means who are of male European descent, but they have been domiciled in India. And they're staying here, not for temporary, but a permanent basis, given the status of Anglo-Indian. Now see, community contribution. The community has made significant contribution, if you ask me, particularly in the dimension of education. If you go to the hubs where education institutions have been there, like Dehradun, go to Nainital, if you go to Shimla, you'll be realizing various Anglo-Indian communities have been running schools also, colleges also. So that is why we realize, especially in the field of education, even in railways and the armed forces also, they have contributed tremendously. Cultural identity, Anglo-Indians maintain a distinct cultural identity with the elements of both the Western and the Indian. Because again, the parents, again, possibly, let us say, one could have been an American, or one could have been European, other an Indian, or both could have been Europeans. They came and settled over here in India, but did not go back to Europe. And similarly, they adopted a mix of the culturals of the Europe and along with that Indian. So there's a mix of cultural identity that is there. Next is constitutional provisions for Anglo-Indian reservation. Please understand that the Constitution originally provided reservation for the Anglo-Indian community to the Parliament as well as the state legislature, but the reservation with respect to the Anglo-Indian has done away with. Right? For every 10 years, the reservation for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and the Anglo-Indians were again through constitutional amendment restored, because originally when the constitution came into force, the reservation for the SC, ST and for that matter Anglo-Indians were also just limited to 10 years, but repeatedly it has been extended after every 10 years. Now, of late, right now we do not have any reservation for the Anglo-Indian community, right? So we need to understand what originally it was present. We can read that. Article 331 permits the President of India to nominate 2 Anglo-Indians to the Lok Sabha committee which lacks adequate representation. Article 333 allows a state governor to nominate 1 Anglo-Indian to the state legislature if the community is underrepresented. Article 334B extended Anglo-Indian reservation in legislative bodies for 40 years in 1949. Now, National Commission for SC examines the constitutional and legal safeguards for the Anglo-Indians. So, in the Article 338, which is a National Commission for the Scheduled Caste, this has been given an additional duty where that you have to take and protect the rights of the Anglo-Indians also. So, this is an important thing, but remember, this has not been extended further now. The Anglo-Indians do not have any reservation with respect to the Parliament as well as the state legislature. Historical context, the Constituent Assembly initially the Constituent Assembly envisioned a 10-year reservation for the SC, ST along with the Anglo-Indians obviously in 1950. Amendment to Article 334, this article which set timelines for ST and Anglo-Indians were again, let us say, repeatedly amended to extend the deadlines and ending it with the 104 Constitutional Amendment of 2019. Though it extended the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe reservation, the Anglo-Indian reservation was not extended. So, it basically came to a conclusion that 2019, by the Constitutional Amendment Act 104, the reservation for the Anglo-Indian has ended in it at the Parliament as well as the state legislature. Now, what are the issues that have been raised by the Anglo-Indian community of late? Please understand this. They have demanded that a restoration of the rights. Many people say they are not underrepresented now because there are certain Anglo-Indians who basically have come to the, let us say, Parliament through states like some in the northeastern region, some in Goa, some from Sikkim also. But then again, the problem that arises is that if the reservation for SC, ST is going on, they said we are also not in large number. We could also be represented through the nomination mechanism that had been given, the president as well as the governor. So they are demanding again to restore it because it is for an inclusive growth and development of all the communities in it. Next is the request for the caste census. Now please understand, leaders call for a caste census to accurately count the Anglo-Indians, asserting that the population is closer to 4 lakh and not 296 as suggested by 2011 census. Because they say that 296 is there and few Anglo-Indians who are already there, who let us say directly elected, who are not nominated but directly elected. So there is adequate representation. But if you see, if the population is greater than 4 lakh and then you see the number of their representation is going to be very less. That is why they're demanding a proper census should take place, which is again now delayed, will begin from 2025, so that we at least get to know how many Anglo-Indians are there. Next is economic and educational challenges. The Anglo-Indians community faces significant economic and educational hardship as highlighted by 2013 Ministry of Minorities. It's reported that issues like housing, struggles and identity crisis are one of the core features or challenges they are facing. Now, next thing that we see is loss of influence of the community institutions. Former MP Charles Dias noted that Anglo-Indians declining control over the institution they built and a challenge with respect to admission and employment is also one of the things, because again we have the dimension of minority institutions and a lot of challenges and cases have been pending in the courts, even in the Supreme Court, so that even poses a challenge to their cultural aspect as well as their autonomy with respect to governing their institutions also. Next, move ahead. Should assisted dying be legalized? Euthanasia debate. So please understand, this is important. Word euthanasia comes. Now what it is? The word euthanasia is a product of two words. Eu means good, 𝐸𝐻 means death. Now we should not call it good death for that matter, but this is how it has been derived. Now if you see, euthanasia refers to the practice under which an individual intentionally ends their life, get relief from the incurable condition or intolerable suffering. So someone who does not want to live and want to, let us say, give up his life because of the suffering. There's a difference between suicide and this. Over here, the condition in the case of euthanasia, it falls under the category of assisted dying, where the condition is such that you cannot improve. In case of suicide is depending upon an emotional or psychological condition where someone having a breakup and commits a suicide. That is an emotional aspect that is temporary, while euthanasia is in those cases where you know that your condition cannot improve now. That is why euthanasia is very different from suicide. So euthanasia falls under the category of assisted dying, which includes assisted suicide. Please understand what it means. When an individual ends another person's life painlessly, whereas under assisted suicide, a physician assists a patient in ending the lethal injection. That's one thing. Now, this is assisted suicide, but simply suicide word is different. Please understand, that means where you take your own life. That is not allowed. Right? That is not allowed. That is not covered over here. Over here, what happens? Euthanasia, where a individual ends another person's life painlessly, whereas under assisted suicide, a physician basically gives a lethal injection. Now, that is why debate is giving that people who are, let us say, in coma for, let us say, 30 years, 20 years, now their condition might not improve. They should be basically given a relief through this means. So there is a debate that is going on. Let us see what it is. Types of euthanasia. One is active euthanasia. It involves an active intervention to end a person's life with substance or external force, such as administration of lethal injection. Active euthanasia, that means through an injection to give some substance or let us say poisonous in nature, which will lead to the death of a person. Now, passive euthanasia, it refers to withdrawing life support system. So let us say someone is on a ventilator or someone is on a life support system and the person dies because that life support system is taken away. That is called passive euthanasia. Voluntary euthanasia, it takes place when a consent of the patient says that I do not want to live, it is voluntary euthanasia. Involuntary is administration without the patient's consent. So that means person dies without the consent of the patient, because when the patient went to coma or his condition deteriorated, that time person had not made any commentary with respect to whether he would be in this condition or not. So you do not have any consent of the patient, but the family decide possibly that it is time that euthanasia should be let us say active euthanasia or passive euthanasia should be performed on a particular patient. So that is without the permission of the patient. Over here, patient's permission is there. Now we will understand how the patient permission is there. Sometimes there's a concept of living will. That means a person before initially only makes a will. Over here he says that, expresses his opinion that if something happens to me, I'm not in a condition, let us say, like I'm in coma, So what should be done? That is the aspect of living will where the initially before his condition deteriorated, the person itself has told what should be done, whether you should be going under any euthanasia or you should be continuing with a life and coma or whatever be the condition in that case. Arguments for euthanasia for autonomy and personal choice. People say it is personal choice, he's been suffering, so it is his choice to give up his life. Alleviating suffering. A person might be suffering from, let us say, very severe on the bedridden for, let us say, 30 years, and that is the worst form of life one can experience. And to end that suffering, one thing, quality of life, because you can say it provides an alternative for individuals that the quality of life has been deteriorated and it is unbearable for them. Next is resource allocation. Realizing if someone is in the hospital, that might be draining the wealth of the family. So that to avoid that, then euthanasia can be performed. Argument against that. Sanctity of life. Many people could be realizing that in the religious or ethical purpose say that life is given by God, it should not be taken by the people himself or herself. That is why even suicide is considered wrong. But over here, that is the basic argument that is given, that sanctity of life, it is going against the basic purpose of life. Next is slippery slope. Concerns are raised that the vulnerable population, such as those with disabilities or mental illness, may be at the risk of coercion and abuse of suicide becomes more widely available to them. That might lead to a ripple effect where many people start committing suicides also, because they said if euthanasia is allowed, then why not suicide? Then medical ethics. Medical ethics basically aims at, when you take the Hippocrates oath, to basically aim at protecting the people, not taking their life. That would be against that. Palliative care alternative. We say that when we talk about palliative care, the old age care or the care that is given to them, those alternatives should be worked on so that they can live a happy life even at the old age, or let us say any problem that arises. And most solutions or development in medical field can be done so that if someone is suffering from this, how can we bring them out of it? That is what is one of the definitions, or let us say a view that is explained. Let's move ahead. Indian judiciary. Aruna Ramchandra Shaubhag versus Union of India 2011. In this case, the Supreme Court held that passive euthanasia can be allowed under exceptional circumstances. It was allowed here. Common Cause versus Union of India. The Supreme Court allowed passive euthanasia while recognizing the living wills of terminally ill patient who could go into a permanent vegetative state, and issued the guidelines for regulating the procedure. Now see, now you know, let us say a patient is there, let us say patient A, like let us assume this hand is patient A. Now he knows that his condition is such that after 2 to 3 years, his condition will be such that he will go in a coma, or let us say he will come in a condition where he will not be able to either speak or be in his senses because of his medical condition. Now before that only, he creates a living will, while creating a will while he is living, that if I go into that state, I would recommend my family so that the euthanasia can be performed because I don't want to suffer. So living will over here is a legal document, specifies the type of medical care that an individual does or does not want in an event where he is not able to communicate. That is why when he will be in the condition, he will not be able to communicate. So in prior only permission is taken with respect to that. It also is known as Advance Directive. 2023 Court modified the guidelines to make it the right to die with dignity more customary. Please remember that Pryopavisa, literally resolving to die through fasting, is a practice in Hinduism that denotes a suicide by fasting of a person who has no desire or ambition left. Similar practice in Jainism, also known as Santhara, is also existing. In Tamil culture, it is known as Vattikruthal or Tokshukushi Binbutsu in Buddhism. So this practices of existing in India through religious means also. But again, we have to interpret or get to the later ideas also what they denote. It doesn't mean simply committing suicide. Please do not overlap with suicide in that case. Netherlands, Luxembourg and Belgium basically allow both euthanasia and assisted suicide. Switzerland has banned euthanasia but allowed assisted dying. Canada has announced that euthanasia and assisted dying would be allowed for mentally ill patients by March 2023. However, it was delayed. United States has different laws in the different states. In some states it is allowed, in some states it is banned. United Kingdom considers illegal and equivalent to manslaughter, so United Kingdom does not allow. So realize that various countries have their own mains question. Now, when we are talking about mains questions of the day, please understand, when we are studying this particular thing, examine the Management 2020 draft. You have to analyze the 15 marks. Try this. The draft provisions that have been there. Next. Prelims topics. National Board for Wildlife was in the newspaper. It is a statutory organization under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Role is advisory. Please remember, this can be asked in your prelims. It is binding or advisory. It is advisory in nature and advises the central government on framing policies and measures for the conservation of wildlife in India. For example, no alteration of the boundaries in the national park and wildlife can be done without the permission. No alteration of the boundaries in any of the national park or the wildlife sanctuaries. It cannot be done without the approval of the National Board for Wildlife. The board is responsible for promoting conservation and development of wildlife. Now, the members, Prime Minister is the chairperson. This need to remember that. Then Vice Chairperson, Minister in charge of Ministry of Environment and Forest in the central, the Vice Chairman. Member Secretary to the board, Additional Director General of Forest and Director Wildlife Preservation as a Member Secretary. 3 Parliament members, 2 from Lok Sabha, 1 from Rajya Sabha. 5 NGOs, 10 eminent conservation ecologists and environment, government secretaries of various departments, and the Chief of the Army Staff. These are those which are basically the members. When we move ahead, PM Rashtriya Bal Puraskar. Please understand, Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Bal Puraskar is organized to celebrate the energy, determination, ability, and enthusiasm of the children. The awards are conferred to the children for the excellence in 7 categories: art and culture, bravery, environment, innovation, science and technology, social service, sports, which deserve national recognition. Each awardee given medal, cash prize of 1 lakh rupees, a certificate and a citation. The selection of awardees was made by a selection committee under the chairmanship of the Union Minister of Women and Children. Awards are given by the President of India on a week preceding the Republic Day every year. Next, eligibility. A child who is an Indian citizen and is a resident of India. A child who is the age of 5 and not exceeding 18 years. The act incident achievement should have been within the 2 years from the receipt of the application that is filed. Next, changes. Please understand, there have been a lot of changes there. The Government of India has been conferring awards to children for exceptional achievement. Initially, please remember that these awards are given under the following categories. There were various awards. National Child Award for Exceptional Achievement since 96, National Child Welfare Award Individual 1979, National Child Welfare Award with respect to institution, Rajiv Gandhi Manav Seva Award. All these awards were going on for a long time. In 2017-18, the awards were given under the following categories. So the categorization changed. Bal Shakti Puraskar, earlier known as the National Child Award. The name Bal Kalyan Puraskar, individual and institution, earlier known as National Child Welfare Award. From the year 2022 onwards, Bal Kalyan Puraskar, both individual and institution, have been closed. So, these awards are not given. On the other hand, Bal Shakti Puraskar has been substituted under the Pradhan Mantri Bal Rashtriya Puraskar. So, you should be knowing this, how these have changed. These are important. Next, now comes the multiple choice question. Please have a look here. Question 1 with options. Answer. Question 2 with options. Answer. Question 3 with options. Answer. Question 4 with options. Answer. Question 5 with options. Answer. So this was the analysis of the Hindu from today's newspaper. Hope you liked it and enjoyed it. We'll be meeting tomorrow and continuing with the current affairs session for Hindu. Take care and Jai Hind.